Hey, everybody, welcome back to Learning Well podcast. I am here with my lovely co-host Annie, and today we are excited to introduce the fall issue of Learning Well Journal. And I wanted to take a quick minute because if you're new here, or I don't know, we only do this every quarter. So sometimes I feel like maybe I should continue to reintroduce the magazine, because if you're new, then you haven't heard this. But we have created a quarterly print magazine that was kind of born from kind of the old blogging days. I used to blog a lot. I used to have kind of one of those homeschool mom blogs that I feel like made their appearance in kind of the early 2000s. And I love paper. I love, tangible things. Part of my heart is just grieved about how everything in our world has moved so digital that we've kind of lost touch with real tangible resources. And so I wanted to create something that you can hold in your hands, you can pass to a friend, you can have on your coffee table, and you can get in your mailbox. So every quarter, Learning Well Journal comes to your mailbox, and each issue covers topics of home, homeschool, faith, and family. So anything that would really fall under those categories, we talk about it. And each issue has its own unique theme that we decide months in advance. So by the time we get to this stage of introducing a new issue, sometimes we've forgotten because we're like 2 issues down the road. But we plan each issue around a verse in scripture and around a theme that kind of fits with the season and will hopefully encourage you. And this season for fall, which we're introducing today, is about boldness. And we planned this whole issue around Joshua 1:9. And I will read it to you guys. It's a pretty common scripture, but I will read it anyway. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So, Annie, do you want to talk about this theme and how we kind of picked it and kind of what direction we're going with this one?
Sure. Yeah. So when we talked about this, I mean, overarching, it feels like if there's any time to be bold,
Mm-hmm.
we're like facing all different kinds of opportunities now to be bold. But mostly, just that very act of homeschooling alone it's a courageous act. It is bold. Even though more people are doing it now, we're still the minority for sure. And so we've talked a lot about how the homeschooling space is inundated now with a lot of voices. There's so much more curriculum than there was, I don't know, even 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
There's just a lot out there, and there are a lot of voices that are giving advice, a lot of it great, some of it not so great. And just really hoping and wanting to give encouragement that if we believe that scripture, then we should believe that for our homeschools as well. And that God truly is with us in this decision. And we need to move forward boldly in that and be confident in, the different, questions or concerns we might have, praying about them and just going forward boldly, knowing that God is with us in that decision. So I think that's kind of what we had talked about when we talked about boldness, and yeah, just being more brave with that and not leaning so heavily on so many voices out there, but um, knowing that we're doing something really big. It's a very countercultural still, even though it's growing. And so, yeah, I think that was kind of the gist of why we chose that particular quality.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the goal here is to just encourage moms to just really own this decision.
mhm.
You've chosen to do something countercultural. And when you do make a big choice like that, I do think you really need to jump in with both feet.
Mm,
And even though it is scary sometimes, if doing something that maybe nobody else in your family is doing, maybe you don't know anyone else that's homeschooling,
mhm,
or I mean a number of other things as well. But if you kind of do it in a way that is sheepish, or you're not really like being bold in that
mhm,
decision, it's you're not going to get the same results. It's you're kind of giving yourself an out. So if you kind of are looking at this decision as, kind of sheepishly, like kind of giving yourself like, I don't know, we're going to see. And, we're just not sure really what we're doing. And if you're not really taking it seriously and just being all in this decision, you're giving yourself a way out.
mm,
And I find like a lot of times, it's like anything, right? It's like if you're going to start working out and you're telling yourself, well, I'm going to go one day a week, and I don't really have a plan. So I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to just, whatever machine I see first, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to really research on like what a good plan would be. I'm just going to go in and kind of see what happens. Um, Chances are you're not going to be working out in a month from now,
mhm.
you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
So I just feel like, ladies, what I want to say is like, just you are the mom.
Mhm,
You've been their mom since day one, and
mhm,
you have actually been their teacher since day one. You taught them their words, you taught them how to tie their shoes, ride a bike, a number of I mean everything that they've learned
mhm,
so far up to kindergarten. But then we have this idea in culture of like, well, I'm not qualified, I didn't go to, I don't have a teaching certificate. It's okay. You really
mhm,
do not need a teaching certificate to be able to teach your child to read. I mean,
mhm.
I'm always like, do you know how to read? If you
Yes.
do, you can teach somebody how to read.
Yes.
It does take patience. For some of us, it takes more patience than others. I mean, patience is not my virtue, because that's another thing that a lot of people say is I could never homeschool because I'm not patient. Well, who is really after being with
Mhm.
kids for an extended amount of time? I mean, you would have to
Yeah.
be an absolute like angel from heaven
Mm,
to be able to just
mhm.
be completely patient with your child all day, every day, unwavering. It just that's just not reality. So I think
Mhm.
when we tell ourselves this, like, well, if this or if that, um, instead of just we're setting out, we're going to homeschool. I have a plan. I've done my research. Um, then we're kind of setting ourselves up to fail. And I think part of the reason too why we chose this is I know you talk to a lot of moms. I talk to a lot of moms who are, you know, they have all the tools and they've done all the research, but then they let outside voices kind of get into their heads, whether
Mm,
that's somebody on the internet or, somebody in their family or their friend group or whatever, and just
mhm.
completely let them throw off the vision that they have
Yeah.
for their family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. I was going to add in there, when you were talking about how, we think that maybe we're not qualified. I just think it's so funny because for so many years, that's exactly what mom's job was to
right.
teach, like, especially um in areas where always think back to like the Little House on the Prairie books, and how they would go really long stints without being able to go to school because of weather or whatever, and it's like that didn't stop, the learning didn't stop, like Ma just picked that up and they had their whatever two books that they had, and they just kept learning. So it's always been our job, but for a really long time now, it's just been taken away from us. And so now we feel like we aren't qualified to do that. And as someone, what I was going to say is, as someone who is married to someone
Mm-hmm.
who was a public school teacher for 11 years, he has a master's in teaching. He would tell you that his teaching degree is primarily, if not 100%, how to deal with classroom management, which as a homeschooling mom, you don't have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So even those that have these, extra like or great degrees in teaching, it's not that they have this amazing degree in content.
No.
Some of them might start that way. And I guess that really is kind of the ideal way to start is to, your undergrad in a content area and then your master's in teaching to teach or whatever, but that's not really how most of them do it. And so they're really just learning how to manage a classroom and maybe lesson planning for 30 to 40 kids, neither of which you have to do.
No.
So you are qualified is what I'm trying to get at, is that you are qualified to teach. And I think so many people are really nervous about that. I
Right.
remember being really nervous to teach my oldest to read when it came time, and we knew we were going to homeschool, but when I started teaching my oldest to read, I was really nervous. And then it just happened. It's like we just, you just move into it, and we kept moving through it, and pretty soon she was reading, and it was like the coolest feeling. I remember thinking, I just taught you how to read. Like
Mhm.
that's that's crazy. And yeah, it's such a cool feeling to know that, we are capable of doing these things. And even as they get older, I know that's the concern as they get older and into high school, that we're somehow taking something away from them because, you know, whether we don't know how to teach algebra or, whatever it might be. There's just so many resources out there. So anyway,
There's so
that's
many resources
cool.
out there for one, and for two, there, you know, if you're starting out with a kindergartner or, a young elementary kid, you do not have to worry about high school. It's
Hmm.
like there's not that you will eventually, but that shouldn't be something that stops you,
No, and by that point, you've been homeschooling for so many years that
exactly.
you are going to feel more confident. You will know that this process works. Okay, we're going to step into this first high school year doing this or
Mhm.
whatever. Like you will be more confident because you will have been schooling for 8 years already, nine
Right.
years. So yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say to find a mom who has some kids that are older than you that you admire. I wouldn't ask somebody that has younger kids than you because they haven't been there yet, or, someone who's, who you don't admire. Um,
Hmm.
but just ask them, what do you do for high school, or what would you recommend? Like you can sit down with somebody as a mentor type of situation at that point when your child is in eighth grade or something like that. You don't have to, solve all the world's problems when you're at point B. You don't have to worry about point Z.
Hmm.
Um, and back to your Ma Ingalls example, I think of her often too. I think like the Ingalls family constantly lives rent free in my head, and it's okay with me. And I
Hmm.
would say this too, you know, for those that maybe don't feel as confident, Laura started teaching when she was 16. She was teaching her own classroom when
Yeah,
she was
that's fair.
16. And
Mhm.
so, back then it wasn't like the teaching certificate. She had to pass something in order to be able to teach, but it was all content. It was all classroom content, name all the presidents, solve
Hmm.
all of these math equations, uh, you know, answer all of these spelling questions, whatever it was. And the tests that they were required as like 12, 13, 14-year olds, you can look them up. It's it's insanely more challenging
Hmm.
than what I feel like our kids do in school today. And
Yes.
so, when you look at that, like, oh, well, she was teaching at 16, like, what did they even have? Trust me, it was harder. It was harder than
Yeah.
what a senior in high school, or even a college kid could do just off the top of their head. It's a little embarrassing, actually,
Yeah.
what young kids in the 1800s did for school compared to now.
Hmm.
Um, you can look them up. It's very interesting. Um, and so, think of Laura and be encouraged. Like she was teaching her own classroom at 16. It was a one-room schoolhouse and it was small for sure, but that's the same thing you're doing as a homeschool mom. is
Mhm.
your kind of own little one-room schoolhouse. So be encouraged and just own your decision. Don't be sheepish about it. Don't be embarrassed about it. Uh, know your stuff for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but have a plan and just go into it with confidence that, God's not going to lead you to something and then uh leave you without the tools and abilities to do that thing. I mean,
Right.
he's going to equip you. Sometimes you're going to feel shaky. I feel shaky. I mean, I think we all do. And but you will come out on the other side and be thankful that you did
Mm.
it because it is just such a worthy endeavor. Um, and I mean, I think that we can all confidently say that the public school system is just there's just no question in my mind that it's just
Mhm.
it's not conducive to learning for children. There's so much there that is really, really um, counterproductive to raising
Mhm.
a healthy kid. And so um, you're doing a good thing, and you should just have confidence, and God's going to equip you.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
think with that, we're going to also so that's the theme for fall. I hope it encourages you. That is our um goal behind this theme is to just like right out of the gate this fall, like let's have boldness and courage to do what we're doing. And so we're gonna go through the issue and just highlight a couple of the articles that we were excited about. And this is always such a tricky thing to do because we just want to talk about each and every one of them. But I will also just quickly say like each issue has kind of just our uh standard features that we have every single issue, which are always really fun to just like fill in each time based on
Mhm.
the theme and the season. And so we always have question and answers with me that people write in, or we also have like a seasonal idea list where we have just made lists for each month covered in that quarter. We also have seasonal favorites. This one was really fun. We did canning favorites, so anything that pertains to canning. We have a fun spread about that. So if you like canning, get excited for that. And then also every issue, Annie writes an afternoon unit study, which is always really fun. This is a fun one. It's on that book called Apples to Oregon.
Mhm.
Oregon. I don't know why I said that. Oregon. Um, but anyway, so you write an awesome afternoon unit study. We base it around like a cute, sweet picture book that's
Mhm.
like a good living book, no twaddle allowed. And
Mhm.
then there's always a recipe and family discussion questions and a little activity, which is just a fun thing to do with young kids.
Yeah.
And then we always have a man page, which is really fun as well for the husbands and also book reviews. So those pop up in every single issue. And
Mhm.
then we also always have at least one, if not more, articles pertaining to teenagers. So in this issue, we have an article written by our friend Ashley Williams, and she wrote what a typical day in the life of a high schooled homeschooler looks like. So that's really fun. So
Mhm.
those are some of the features that pop up every year or every season. And then Annie, you can share some of your favorite or some of the articles you wanted to highlight as well.
Mhm. Well, I think like a couple that just go, we always try and, obviously fit several of our articles around the theme. And the one that I wanted to mention for sure was the one that Lydia wrote for us about she homeschools so uniquely. I feel like it's hard to find people homeschooling like this anymore. But she is, pretty strictly a unit study homeschooler. And
Mhm.
if you haven't, you should really follow her. She's, I think, at Happily Ever Caffeinated. And she she kind of writes and creates her own unit studies, which is even more unique because there's a lot of great unit study curriculum out there. But she really kind of just prepares her own. And so we had asked her to write an article that kind of goes through how do you do that? Because I think it's really overwhelming for people for good reason, I think, just because it encompasses, with unit studies, you're taking a topic and wrapping all of the subjects around that topic. But she did such a good job, I feel like, explaining her thought process, which is really, I think she compares it to if you give a mouse a cookie in this article. And it really is. She takes you through like that entire thought process of something that they're studying. And it's just, I thought that was really good. But I thought that was so great when you relate it to the theme of boldness, because this is not the typical way that people are homeschooling anymore. I mean,
Right.
most homeschoolers are coming out and they're, purchasing box curriculum or, even things that the schools are using and, recreating public school in their home. And she is going against the grain and, really taking into account how her children learn and their strengths. And so I really loved that one. I think she did a great job. Um, and then the other one, that I was going to bring up was this has been on our list for quite some time, but we had our friend Nikki Truesdell finally write an article for us explaining what school choice is, which is such a hot topic these days. So, and I think it's a really misunderstood topic amongst homeschoolers, well, amongst everybody, but I think homeschoolers are kind of misinformed by a lot of people on what school choice actually is. So she does a very thorough job of explaining what that is. And so I really enjoyed that one as well. I thought she did a great job. How about you? What are some of your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I loved those too as well. We had a couple of articles that, well, I don't know. I like so many of them. It's really hard. I hate this part of the podcast because I'm always like, I don't know, how many can we say? Like, should we just say everything?
Right.
Um, but there's there's a really good article in there from Mary Prather. She's from Homegrown Learners or Squilts Music, if
Hmm.
you follow her. And she kind of goes on these, maybe she doesn't want me to call it a rant, but like a low-key rant. She'll go, in her car, or she'll just have a thought and she will share about it, I feel like in a really bold way. And
Hmm.
so a while back she had posted this just short video on Instagram about just how she was seeing a lot of homeschool moms that were really relying on co-ops a lot, or dual enrollment, or kind of some of those things just very heavily. And so really, like, the majority of their homeschool day was spent out of the house or away from, like, the mom's not really teaching much anymore at all. So anyway, she and I were talking about that privately, and she posted about it online. And so she wrote an article on just getting back to kind of the old fashioned ways of homeschooling, like
Hmm.
getting back to, you know, kind of the mom and dad, like being um, the deciders in the homeschool, and kind of going from there,
Hmm.
instead of kind of like forming your whole homeschool life around outside activities and stuff like that. So I thought that was a really good one.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, that's
then
great.
uh, we also have just a few features I feel like that are just practical and helpful in starting out in your homeschool year. And one of them is creating a homeschool mission statement. And there's also like I call it a printable. I'm not quite sure what you would call it in a
Hmm.
magazine because you're not printing it. We did, but um, it's just a kind of a template in the magazine where you can kind of fill in your own mission statement. And I think that we will probably talk about it on the podcast. So what we like to do is, so for the next quarter, we will for the next 3 months we will talk about topics from this issue of the magazine on the podcast, which is kind of fun, which is how we kind of wrap it all up together and know what we're going to talk about. And so we'll probably talk about that on the podcast. And then the other one too, that I just feel like is always helpful to kind of circle back to when you're starting out homeschooling again for the new year is kind of homemaking and home keeping, like how to keep your house clean when you're homeschooling. And so we have a couple of just examples of what that could look like, and you can kind of tweak it to however fits, your schedule and things like that. But sometimes even after homeschooling for a long time, you get back to the homeschool year and you're like, oh my gosh, like my house is falling apart. How do I keep up on everything? I do feel like from year to year, your schedule changes a little bit. Your kind of the dynamics in your home change a little bit based on like the ages of your kids and things like that. And so it's like, okay, I don't know how to do this. So there's some examples in there on that topic. And then
I loved the one that Kaylin wrote about
yes,
about paint colors. This is actually my friend. I grew up with her, Kaylin, from I think her handle is the House Cricket. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And her account is gorgeous. I mean, she's a photographer and she's just amazing with design. And we had asked her to write an article about basically like picking bold colors, like paint colors for your home in a kind of pushback against the whole white and gray,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know,
Trend.
whatever trend, I guess. Yeah, that took way too many years from us. So anyway, yeah, kind of pushing back on that. So she talks about like picking very bold colors for all of her rooms. She kind of
Yeah.
shares all of their rooms, and I just thought it was fun. And it was encouraging to me because I
Mm-hmm.
admittedly and shamefully fell into that
Mm-hmm.
gray trap and am hoping to crawl out of it. But that's one area that I don't feel super confident with, like picking a bold paint color like that. And so I found it really encouraging. Yeah, I
Yeah.
liked that one.
Yeah. That was fun
Yeah.
because like we said, every magazine talks about home
Mhm.
and homeschool and faith and family. And it's like, we know that when we homeschool, we don't just do school all day. I mean, there's just many, many, many factors that kind of go in throughout the day. And so it's like still do have to do laundry and clean our
Mhm.
houses and make dinner. So we include recipes and things like that. And yeah, we have to decorate our homes and like
Mhm.
have a cozy home for our kids to spend the day in. So that's why we like to include things like this,
Yep.
choosing bold paint colors, making a cozy home, things like that,
Mhm.
will hopefully encourage you as a homeschool mom to um it's to know it's not just homeschool 24/7. Like we have lots of things to do. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're why we choose things like that.
Mhm.
um yeah, I mean, we could go down lots of different roads. I really enjoyed I really really enjoyed our recipe feature this season because Annie, you had this idea, which I thought was so fun, asking the question, what is the difference between buckles, crumbles, crisps, and crumbles? Which
Mhm.
sounds like, oh, wait,
The
cobblers,
cobblers. Yeah.
cobblers. Um, which I was like, oh my gosh, what is the difference? So we kind of went down
And
this rabbit trail.
yeah, we learned they're
They're
very
very
subtle
subtle.
differences.
They're
Yep.
very subtle, but we have recipes on all of those, and we are still benefiting off of that article because I have a few of them still in the freezer that
Yeah,
I'm pulling out every once in a while. Like if we're having guests or something, I'll pull out,
I was
oh, hey, a
jealous.
crumble.
Yeah, when you were taking pictures and baking them, I'm like, "Oh, not only does your house probably smell amazing, but you're getting to eat all of those.
Yeah, very
Yum.
fun. So
Yeah.
definitely some delicious fall desserts in this issue as well.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we're very excited about this issue. Let me look at my calendar quick. I should have done this before, but as this podcast airs, We have a couple more days left to order or to subscribe to the magazine and to still get the fall issue. So the deadline for that is Friday, August 9th. So if you're interested in subscribing to the magazine and getting the fall 2024 issue, do that before August 9th, and you will receive this as the first issue in your subscription. Also, we always have a handful of leftovers that we put in our shop. So you can find a few of those now in the shop from like summer, and I don't know if we have spring left, but you can go and see what we have left in the shop right now for back orders, or not back orders, back issues. So yeah, I'm excited about this issue. I hope that you guys will check it out. And we're going to be continuing on this season of the podcast, talking about things under this topic and things that we're pulling from the magazine. So we're going to be talking about creating a homeschool mission statement, like goals for the year and things like that. And also our own like cleaning and organizing regimens. So get excited for that.
Yay.
And lots of other things as well. So we hope that you guys will continue tuning in. Leave us a review if you're listening on iTunes, and leave us a comment if you're listening on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. So go ahead and check out the link below in the description to check out all the details for Learning Well Journal. And just remember to do the next right thing. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Actually, scratch that. We're taking a bit of a break because I'm taking my son to college and I need a minute. I'm not sure exactly when to get all the recording in. And so we will be back in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that, but it's going to be good. So we will see you guys soon, and have a great